about subordinates. Subordinate, most of the time you talk about people who give themselves to a vision and a mission and work towards it. Probably not because, sometimes not even if they don't believe in it. He's an office messenger. Even if he doesn't believe in a vision, he's there for a salary. At the end of exactly. So at the end of the day, he doesn't have to believe in the vision.
Yeah.
He has been employed there. He does his job. He goes home. At the end of the month, he earns. But when it comes to the issue, when it comes to followership, what leads to follow? Even within that formal context, there can be some subordinates can distinguish themselves as followers. Followership comes as a result of people identifying with a common vision and buying into it. They say, I believe in this thing. So it's not about me just working here and earning a salary, but I'm convinced this vision is good and I've bought into it. So he's following the boss, he's obeying him, not because he just wants to earn a salary at the end of the month and do his part, what he has been given, but because he has bought the vision. And you'll find in organizations there are those two kinds of people. There are those who are just subordinates, they're just there, they're doing what they're being told. At the end of the month, they earn their salary. But there are those whom you find they go beyond what they're being asked to do. They're very passionate about what the organization is about. That is what distinguishes subordinate and followers in organizations, and all of them are serving.
They're different capacities.
Exactly, they are serving. But just going down to what she said, the motives. Someone said, another one is, I'm just here because of the salary. Have you ever heard someone saying, if I find a job elsewhere, I would leave this work. I'm just here because I need a salary. I need to take care of my children. I need to pay, say, rent to meet my bills. But if I had an opportunity elsewhere, I would go. You see, that one is just, is not a servant, but their motives of being there is themselves. As long as their own interests are taken care of and they are covered, they don't care about anything else. They are good to go.
So, we are all agreeing that servanthood is about the attitude, the motive. It goes beyond the action. What you spoke about, the characteristics of servanthood, being teachable, being humble, what he has just said, they are very key when calling someone a servant. It goes beyond just the action. Because even the family unit, it may not really be a very formal setup, but the structures are clear. There's something that we know, that the man is the head, the wife, the children follow that order. So once the order is disrupted, there's always something is not okay. You've understood. And I can also say, when you talked about the calling, it is also very important, because when people are not called, that's when it becomes, even in ministry, even in church, it's not just, because even churches nowadays, they're like formal organizations. It's not, that's why I was talking about the book of Acts. As much as it didn't really look like it's formal, but you can clearly see the structures. It talks about the prophets, the apostles, certain teachers. You can clearly see that there are structures and there's authority. But above all, they all counted themselves as servants of God. Nobody saw him or herself to be superior to another. It's, because a true servant and a true leader, that's why we are talking about servant leadership, let's not mistake. A servant leader embraces teamwork. But all of them, people need to understand that the leader has just been given the vision, the mission is just being used. So those ones who are teachable, who have been trained, who understand humility, who are loyal, trustworthy, they will support, they will not look at the leader. It's not about the person. It is about the vision, the mission, the values, the goals. And I think everybody in life has that, Wendy. Even you, even as an individual. The way you are, you have your vision, your mission. If somebody comes in to disrupt as an individual, so whoever will come into your life, you'll be a servant to them and they'll be a servant to you in submission one to another. But you'll be working towards a particular vision, mission. It's not just anyhow. That's what servanthood is all about.
You know, as you were talking, I was remembering Paul asking when the church of Corinth wanted to take sides, you know, and he was asking, is Apollos important? Am I important? You know, he planted, I watered, but God is the most important. And I would say, like Paul, imitate me as I imitate Christ. There is no servant that we would say is perfect. But the servant is also imitating Christ, who is the master. And so we get to, you know, imitate. You find people and you say, I would like to be like so and so. I would want such a character. I would want, you know. And it is important and that we look up to Christ as our master, and we are able to follow his steps. Even when he was doing his ministry, we are able to see the kind of things he used to do and how he used to do them. And so some of the things that Pastor Mark and Prophetess Nekesa have added is that you need to be submissive for you to be a servant. You need to be selfless for you to be a servant. You need to be humble for you to be a servant.
And to avoid competition. When you've just spoken about when people were saying, I think it's in 1 Corinthians 2, when they said, some said, I follow Apollos.
Yes.
And when you look, the problem, because I did a bit of research, when it comes to Apollos, you look, there's something they didn't understand. And after they were taught, that's why we talked about having a teachable spirit, because when we are not teachable, there is what we call rivalry, competition, and that's what we are seeing in this generation currently. The disciples went to Jesus and they wanted to find out who was the greatest among them.
Yes.
And Jesus told them, the least is the greatest, and the greatest is the least. So it all boils down to humility. And Jesus himself led by washing their feet.
True.
But he reminded them, no servant is greater than his master.
By the way, when you look at the story of Apollos and Paul, Apollos, by the way, did not want to divide the church. He was very passionate. So it took just members of the congregation who knew beyond the baptism of John to call him aside, Aquila and Priscilla, and tell him, by the way, brother, we love your passion, but you don't stop at the baptism of John. You know, there is something more than the baptism of John. He was passionate. So while people were there, they're looking at this man, he's fervent, he loves God. And the people saying, hey, me, I would love to have this kind of man for my bishop or for my pastor or my apostle. But then when all those things came up, it's not that apostle is the one who instigated them. People loved his charisma and all that, and he was passionate about God. But then someone noticed, it's not that this man is bad. He's passionate and people are falling for his charisma. And they are now saying, Sisa tutafata Paul tena, we will follow this guy. So they called him aside. That's now where we're coming again to what I was saying. This was the preacher, but people in the congregation who knew something. You know, when you always work in a context, you work in a family, in a community, there's always something that someone else knows that probably the leader hasn't known. You have an organization, say, you have the leader has a master's degree, but he has some of the people working with him who have PhDs. They know something a little bit more. And so we can learn from each other. But then, of course, at the end of the day, when it comes to making important decisions, it always, even if the leader has a diploma and the followers have masters and PhDs, the PhD holders will not be the ones who make that decision. It is the leader. So everything, now, eventually everything will boil down to the leader. So we find people from the congregation calling the preacher who was on the pulpit, who because out of his charisma, people were saying brought division in the church. They called him aside and showed him a more excellent way.
Yeah, so it just, I remember teaching that sermon in Uganda, and it still boils to the teacher, because when you've not been taught, you can bring a lot of confusion. It may look like he didn't instigate, but somehow he did, because when you're ignorant, you can bring a lot of confusion. That's why Paul was talking about it, because zeal without knowledge can be dangerous, and the element of being teachable, and that's what I was talking about. Coming on Facebook, coming on everything, talking about things you're not understanding just because you have tested just a little bit knowledge of something. Look at the Apostle Paul, the encounter that he had with Jesus Christ, a very radical encounter. But it took quite some time, years. Even after that encounter, he had to go through a process, and this was a man who was learned. You hear him giving his biography. He talks. He was circumcised on the 8th day. He was learned. He was a Pharisee. He was trained under the best, Gamaliel. He was not an ignorant fellow, and it took submission, humility, being betrayed. At one point, even some apostles could not accept him. Some people even had taken vows to kill him. But then, it took prayers, hearing from God, and when his time came, separate for me Paul and Barnabas. And Paul always introduced himself a bond servant. He was a servant of God. Why? He bears the characteristics of what servanthood is: a teachable spirit, a humble person. Of course, in theology they argue and they say he was bragging and what, but you see humility with the level of knowledge, being a Jew, and he was both a Jew and a Roman citizen. He served.
By the way, there's something Paul said. He says, actually, just to discredit the issue that he was bragging, he was telling them, if you are talking about being a Jew, I am a Jew. I was circumcised on the 8th day. He said, in fact, later on, he said something. If there's anyone who has anything to boast about, I think I have more things to boast about. But for the sake of Christ, I've considered them all like dung. So he says, according to you Jews and you people, these are the things you brag about. But if you want to go that way, I have more things that I can brag about. And he lists them down. He says, but because of Christ, I lay them down and I consider them all to be nothing.
So yes, actually, so servanthood, it boils down to you empty yourself, you make others a priority, you serve out of your will. It should never be about us, and a clean heart and
good motives.
Christ should be our example. Then we go back to the kenotic theory, where Christ, in the book of Philippians 2, he came down and he emptied himself. He humbled himself and died that death. He came down for the sake of mankind. He felt our needs. So a true servant should be able to empathize, serve with kindness, serve willingly. Yeah.
I hope you are learning. I hope you have a pen and a book. There is so much wisdom that you need to get from that. Thank you for joining us. It has been an awesome time. And it's good that we are able to hear from different perspectives. And we are able to learn. We are able to gain more knowledge on top of what we already know. I know someone somewhere the mindset has been changed from what you knew. I know someone has added something on top of what they knew. And all this is for us to become good servants, that even when we stand at the throne on that particular day, Jesus will not tell us, I do not know you. He will tell us, welcome, faithful servants, because of the work that we have done on the face of the earth.
Amen.
So may the Lord bless you. May his face shine upon you. And see you next time. I hope you're blessed. And if you're blessed, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And I'll see you soon. And we'll look for more forums with the Pastor Mark and Prophetess Nekesa. So if you want more topics, you can also suggest on topics that you would want us to cover so that your life will never be the same again. God bless you.
Amen.